Let's just get Abhaya Agarwal in from E&Y, his partner and leader infrastructure practice. Soumya Kanti Ghosh. Dr. Soumya Kanti Ghosh is Chief Economic Advisor at State Bank of India. Dr. Ghosh, welcome to the show. Abhay, but first to you, since we were discussing some of these things pre-budget, you've heard the budget now. What's your first take?
I think there are a lot of announcements regarding investment through PPPs, stations, outsourcing, and almost 40,000 crore on port connectivity. I think we'll have to see details how things are going to be different this time, because railway ability to absorb investment and push investment on ground has been low. All of these projects take time. There are a variety of issues, from land acquisition to tribal land to environmental clearance to also availability of money, etc. So it will be interesting to see how some of these things get pushed. But I think one very important announcement has been made around restructuring of railway board. No details have been provided, but I think railway requires a dedicated organization for planning and investment, because operation is a very different thing vis-a-vis planning and investment. And one of the reasons for railways' ability not to be able to push a lot of investment is that they get embroiled mostly on operation side. So if that happens, I think that will be a major change, a game changer for railways. If you see NHAI, when NHAI came into being, a lot of highway projects got pushed, also because of dedicated organization to make policies, to push projects. I think if some of these things are implemented in railways going forward, that will be a good step. And the details would be, of course, we'll have to see that how these formulation group and implementation group, how do they function, because they seem to be more of informal kind of organization structure rather than formal kind of organization structure. And implementation is also going to take some bit of time. But overall, I think budget is good and a lot of focus on investments. I think going forward, since it's only 1 month since government has come, expecting too much for a long-term story is difficult. But I will like to see a 5-year, 10-year story in terms of what railway is looking ahead and following it year on year rather than announcing every year. That will be a good thing to do. And particularly Sam Pitroda and Deepak Parikh committee report is a very good start to do a long-term reform in railways.
Okay, just coming back on some specifics, let me get Dr. Ghosh in. Dr. Ghosh, your first sense on what's been presented?
See, I think there are a couple of issues in the rail budget. The numbers which has been presented looks very pragmatic, because if you look at the numbers, there is a clear admission that the numbers which were floating, that around 1.4 lakh crores of investment is required for 10 years. And for the last 4 years, I think there has been no investment. So basically, we have to mobilize now around 14 lakh crores in the next 6 years. So the railways are actually, the finances are not in that good position. So, and the numbers, the assumptions which have been given, for example, the freight at 4.9%, passenger traffic as 2%, I think are realistic assumptions. And that's why the operating ratio has slipped to around 94 in the budget. So in terms of the numbers, they look very pragmatic and achievable. But there has been a lot of positive steps in the budget, and I think it's in the right direction. For example, if you look into the announcements which is made in the budget in terms of unbundling of the services, for example, the parcel is one of them, catering, food is one of them, and that's a very good idea. And all successful rail experiences, including Japan, shows that the railways has been unbundled into different companies, which may be finally the way forward for the Indian railways also. And because if I look into the restructuring, the railway board also has another positive. So that's a very positive step. And wherever it has been done in terms of a vertical, I mean, crisscrossing of the railway into different services, that has paid rich dividends. And the other thing is that there has been also been a lot of emphasis on the passenger safety, cleanliness, hygiene, food, introduction of the bullet trains, And some other positive steps has been in terms of the lowering of the market borrowing estimates, which I believe will be a difficult thing because the financiers are not looking that good. But the one small announcement which he made during the course of the discussion is that he wants to make the railway budget announcement, or some sort of an on-tap announcement. So he will try to make announcements throughout the year. So I think that's a very positive step. So if this the way forward for the railways in terms of this investment and everything has been spelled out in terms of getting more money, and if that comes and the finances is every 5 years we see a deterioration in the railway finances. This year also the pension outgo has been pegged at around close to 30,000 crores. In 2019 we had a similar predicament when the total net revenue, which this year has dwindled around 3,783 crores, which was only one crore in 2009-10. So that's the problem with the railways in terms of the different pension outgo. So going forward, it's a very positive step in terms of unbundling of the services, and I think it has to be replicated in the forthcoming budget also in terms of a broader vision document.
Right. So you're giving this one top marks, right? More so in terms of projecting realistic numbers. And of course, Abhay, just that point that Dr. Ghosh made, did you get a sense that, we are moving, the railway minister gave the impression that he wants to move towards unbundling of various services in the entire rail infrastructure or operation into different units, separate units. And that's the way forward. That's what we will see over the next many years. Slowly, but that's the way.
Yeah, I think that's the way Chinese also went. And if you see the larger focus for railways is passenger. So, and if the, I don't know whether reorganization or restructuring is going to be on the services or it is going to be on the lines of operation and investment, etc., because it has not been spelled out. But I think that is the way it should be. And I think there should be some bolder reforms which he is hinting. But I don't think the entire blueprint is ready. That's why he's not going whole hog on it. But we'll be happy to hear some of those stories, how things are going to change. So railway has been an implementation nightmare in the past. And some of these investments and other stories which Minister has just spelled out, if he can turn them around through various process improvement, system, decision making, etc., that would be a much important than announcing big time investments and stories.
Yeah, that bullet train that we were discussing, that has found mention, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, 2 hours flat, right? Under 2 hours.
Yeah. So it is, it will be under 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. But, so 100 crores provided for that. But as you said, this is only for, testing, and it's going to be a very expensive project, very capital intensive project. But initially, the first year or so, they're just going to scout it out, right? Yeah.
So in the first year, I think they have to make the detailed blueprint ready and land acquisition plans, etc. Because the land acquisition as such will only start after 1.5 or 2 years kind of thing. It's a long story. It could be 10 years. It could be, if it goes like DFC, it could be 12, 13 years. If it is implemented in a very tight manner, it can be done in 7 to 8 years. So we'll have to see that how it gets implemented.
Right. Okay. So the FDI point, Abhay, that has come through as well. So I think the cabinet will clear it. What do you expect to see?
So FDI in infrastructure is a non-issue.
Earlier, they said that right now the sector is not conducive. The structures are not in place where it will attract a lot of foreign money. Yeah, that's what the L&T management stake was. Yes.
Yeah. So if you are implementing a large project on NUT, and it's a railway infrastructure project, I don't see any harm in getting FDI into it, because it's ultimately the money, and the money is going into infrastructure which will provide rail operations. Rail operation, in any case, I think the private sector investment is limited to container train operation, and it is not an immediate priority, because if railways can lease existing path and existing trains to private sector for better commercial operation and better commercial risk transfer, that itself would be a big step. We are not looking at private sector coming and investing into rolling stock and running it as FDI.
Dr. Ghosh, your thoughts on this FDI point?
See, I think FDI, ultimately the way forward is FDI in the railways, because if you look at all the successful experience of the railways across the world, apart from South Africa, all countries in the world, if you look into the FDI is permitted in the railways, and that too up to 100%. So, and I think the government has also made it clear that except operation, FDI is welcome. And where from the money will come from? Because 14 lakh crores, I believe, is the next 6 years is the additional fund requirement for the railways. So, if that is the case, and if you remember in the last, during the period of, I think, the mid-decade of 2004-5 till 2009-10, when the fares are not high, if you look at the figures, the safety fund, the appropriation to the safety fund was almost non-existent, and that is maybe one of the reasons why there has been such a spot in the accident. So if you have to money, FDI is the way forward, and the government and the experience of all other countries shows that everywhere it is permitted apart from South Africa. So that's one thing. And the other thing which I just mentioned in the course of your discussion is that there has been also been mention of the corporates maintaining some of the stations. So that is another way. I mean, that was one of the recommendations of one of the earlier railway ministers. So that could also add to some sort of a revenue mobilization and involving the corporates and in terms of the maintenance activities. So overall, if I look into the number, it may not be at the 2014-15 numbers looks reliable, but there has to be a blueprint for how it is to be achieved. And once the note goes into the cabinet, the FDI one, and if that comes through, I think a lot of the burden of the fund mobilization for the railways could be taken care of.
Abhay, in your assessment, which sectors will see, which particular areas in railways will see interest from foreigners?
So I think one is rolling stock, and as dedicated freight corridor gets implemented, you need high-speed locomotives, which can carry larger trains, heavier trains, etc. And you also require better kind of wagons, which can carry more weight and less stair weight. You need special wagons like carrying automobiles. Then you need investment in track, you need investment in bridges. And if the cost of capital is within limit and it is lower than what you can finance through within Indian finance system, then it is worth it.
Okay. Okay. I think Bombardier has a factory in Gujarat, right?
Yeah.
Abhay?
Yeah. So, as you know, this story of locomotives and train sets, etc., is largely around metro, not so much around railways. But if railway opens up the rolling stock market, a lot of technology will improve, a lot of exports will happen, but it has to be clearly thought out how it has to be done.
Right. This dedicated freight corridor, which we were discussing earlier, and you said, well, we've been hearing about it for years on end, and one of the reasons why it's been stuck is land acquisition, which you said, right?
No, so there are a number of issues. I think the contracting and the step loan on account of which you need a Japanese partner. There are a lot of issues, but I think they all can be sorted out, and they are being sorted out. The only thing is that time is essence of this, because you have sunk half of cost, half of is left. So there is a kind of lot of escalation in the cost and lot of sunk cost where interest is being borne. So I think there is a kind of urgency because you need, first of all, those freight carrying capacity. On other hand, you need those investments, and also there is a additional cost overrun which is happening. So we need to kind of pull it off very smartly and at a record time.
But if land acquisition, right? I mean, you said that was also an impediment. That's the other thing which is being watched in this budget session. Whether it's an act now, right? It's law. Whether that will be amended, changed. Yeah. Some industry suggested it should.
But I believe there was a special land acquisition law for DFCC, dedicated freight. So that is not so much of an issue for this particular project.
For this particular project, fair enough. The other thing is, which the BJP manifesto also spoke about, was the diamond quadrilateral connecting the 4 metros, right? Which has been announced in the budget. And you spoke about it earlier.
Yeah.
Would this but you said that these trains, higher speed trains, would run on the existing track.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What kind of changes are we talking about? What kind of investment are we talking about? Or you think it's minimal? I mean, it's not
No,
very large.
it is not going to be minimal investment. So, running at 200 can mean fencing, first of all. Then you have sharp curves and urbanization and a lot of encroachment around the curves, etc. that will have to be removed. So you may have to go for some elevated stretches or some bypasses kind of thing. You may also have to go for better technology, which is tilting train, because on the curves, when the train goes at a high speed, it cannot negotiate. So it has to tilt, and there are hydraulic or other kind of pneumatic arrangements on which it balances its specific gravity. So some of these things will have to, so the technology will improve in India in terms of rolling stock, because tilting train, etc. will come into being. And also a lot of infrastructure will have to be upgraded, both in terms of the capacity of the track to take on additional load, and also in terms of better speeds, and also in terms of geometric corrections.
Dr. Ghosh, your sense on these 2 points? The Diamond Quadrilateral project, first up.
Yes. See, I think, yes, the Diamond Quadrilateral is a very good initiative, and one also small initiative which the government has mentioned in the course of the discussion was that it plans to introduce AC coaches for this moving of the perishable goods. So I think that's a positive step, because if generally if we transport these perishable goods by roads, it always takes a lot, the time taken is longer. So if we take it by trains and through AC coaches, so that is also addressing to the supply constraint. So this is one small thing, and the second thing is that if the Diamond Quadrilateral is done, and which obviously will require a huge amount of investment, over a point of time it will be beneficial, because given the competition it will introduce, the airfares also may come down. So that will be a win-win situation for the consumers in the ultimate. So I think that's a positive step, but I believe that may not be this Diamond Quadrilateral, these bullet trains may not be done immediately, but even if at least some of the sectors, even if the 4 metros, the quadrilateral, if that is also done maybe in the next couple of years, that could be a positive for the air transport also in general.
One last question, Dr. Ghosh. Does this railway budget give you any indication as we head into the union budget? How that one will be, the big one?
Yeah, I think the union budget also, I sense that, and I have been, talking about this, the union budget will be realistic in terms of the numbers. So you will not be surprised if you look at a deficit which may be maybe 4.5% as opposed to 4.1% of the interim budget. And it should, I think, also rule out some of the, rule in some of the priorities of the new government. Disinvestment is obviously going to be one of the priorities. And the other thing is it could also talk about in terms of some of the infrastructure revival, because that has been a most talking point of the railway budget. So the union budget should also talk about the infrastructure revival. I mean, giving a push to the infrastructure sectors, and some sort of also announcements for the consumers may not be ruled out in terms of the tax be minimal, but the announcement could have a feel-good factor for the middle class as a group. For example, the housing loan exemption, the Section 80C. So some of this could also be given into the budget. But I think that the budget, again, that the railway budget, which has been, the numbers given out has been pragmatic, even though the numbers doesn't look too good on paper, but at least they are pragmatic. And I think the union budget also will give out the numbers which will be pragmatic. So don't be surprised if we go for a higher deficit number this year, but later on we have a consolidation path which shows that how to reduce the deficit over the next 3 to 4 years, to be clearly laid out in the budget document.
Got that. Dr. Ghosh, it's a pleasure as always to have you with us here. Abhay, thanks very much for staying on. And good to get your perspective as well, an expert perspective. Appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you very much.